Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. Where do the Phils rank in some important spots in the division as we draw closer to the season opener? Well, we'll discuss on today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You may know me from some of my other work in the sports talk space. I've been over on air at 97.5 The Fanatic doing Philly Sports Talk Radio for about 5 years now. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for 3 seasons, and this is now my 4th year as the host of Locked On Phillies. Please make sure that you're rating and reviewing if you're listening to us in podcast form. If you're checking us out on the YouTube and you haven't subscribed yet, go to Locked On Phillies YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button. It'll get you notifications when new episodes are posted. It's also a great way to help us out here on Locked On Phillies. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So go ahead and check out our friends over at FanDuel. We're starting to turn more of our attention towards opening day now, as we are under 2 weeks away to the Phillies taking on the Washington Nationals down there in D.C. for the first game of the regular season. That will be on March 27th, if you're not aware of the date. So we're getting there, and we're going to do a couple of things that point that way in today's episode. First, we haven't really talked about the division much. The division has been mentioned a couple times. It's mainly been Phillies-centric stuff. Well, we have an NL East roundtable where I joined the 4 other hosts of Locked On channels in the NL East, and we got into it about everything for the season. So that is going to be posted on March 24th. So keep an eye on that just a couple of days before opening day. It'll be on our regular feed and everything, so you can watch that. But I want to lead off today's episode by talking a little bit about where the Phillies stand in the NL East compared to some of their peers, and really 2 of their peers, because Marlins and Nationals are lagging behind the other 3 teams in the division. We're also going to talk about some recent spring trends. We haven't done a check-in on numbers really all that recently from spring training. And as much as I've been telling you all spring training, hey, this doesn't matter. I want you to be aware of what's going on so that you at least understand how certain players are performing or not performing in spring. Whether it matters or not, you should know the numbers or at least know the trend. So we will discuss that. And then we have our off-the-poll question on Taijuan Walker that we have responses to that I'll run through, and I'll tell you if I agree or disagree with what you said. So let's get into this conversation on where the Phillies stand in the NL East. And really, there's 3 main categories that we're going to break down. The 3 that obviously matter most. You could probably pick them out yourself. It's going to be rotation. It's going to be bullpen. It's going to be lineup. Now, we could do defense, but can we be honest for a second? Defense is kind of boring. I don't care who the best defensive team in the NL East really is. I mean, baseball, they chase the home run for a reason, right? Not just the Phillies, but the league. It's more exciting to see guys hit the ball out of the park or a dude throw 102 than a guy make a nice sound play in right field. So we're going to focus on, again, lineup, rotation, and bullpen. So let's start with the lineup first, because this is where it's trickiest. Now, something I need you to remember. I have said before, and you'll hear me say it again on the NL East division preview, this is the best division in baseball, in my opinion. These are 3 of the best, 5 teams in baseball here in the NL East when you look at the New York Mets, the Atlanta Braves, and the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, I'm sorry to the Marlins and Nationals. You're not going to get a lot of love in this segment. That's just reality. The Marlins are bottom feeders, and the Nationals are, they could win 70 games, I guess, right? They could kind of make a little bit of noise, but they're not contenders in the way that the Phillies, Braves, and Mets are. So really, the strength of this division is carried by 3 top tier teams, and that's what we're mainly going to be looking at. But you might say, well, the Phillies won the division last year. I don't know if they can repeat that again. You might feel better after we go through this exercise. So when we look at the lineup, the Phillies are up there, right? But there's an argument to be made that they have the 3rd best lineup in division. When you look at what the Mets did in bringing back Pete Alonso, signing Juan Soto, they've got Mark Vientos, they've got Francisco Lindor, they've got good balance throughout their lineup. they're pretty darn good. The Braves, we know what the Braves have. They've got Acuna. They've got Murphy when he's healthy. They've got Olsen. They've got Riley. They've got Harris. They've got everybody. The Braves lineup is unbelievable. The problem last year is they all got hurt, and that's what happens when you play 162 games basically every year. Eventually, you're going to have one of those seasons where guys just wear down. But we're not talking about potential for injury. We're not talking about longevity. We're talking about best lineup. And the best lineup in the division, unfortunately for the Philadelphia Phillies, is not theirs. It is the Atlanta Braves. I'm giving them best lineup in the division. And then it's a toss-up a little bit between the Mets and the Phillies. I guess coming off of the postseason last year, I got to give the nod to the Mets in a coin flip type of situation, just because, well, one, they beat the Phillies last year. Two, they added Juan Soto, who's the best hitter on either of these teams. And yes, I love Bryce Harper, but right now Juan Soto is the best hitter, probably in division. Acuna, Harper, those are the only two guys that I'd really look at as like, okay, you can make a case for those dudes, better overall hitters. But so the Braves have the best lineup. The Mets, I'm giving a nod as like 2A, and the Phillies are like 2B. And then it's the Nationals, and then it's the Marlins. But my thing is, when I look at this division, if you're third in the division, you might be fourth in baseball. You might be fifth in baseball. So don't take this as the Phillies don't have a good enough lineup. Take this as the lineups in the NL East are stacked. So off the bat, Phillies, third best in the first thing. But here's where they really start to make it up. When you go to rotation, the Phillies have the best rotation in the division, and it's not that close. Not at all. The Braves have a couple of nice arms. They're really going to like, I think, what they get out of Spencer Schwellenbach and also Spencer Strider, two strong Spencers at the top of their rotation. But they lost Max Fried. Can Chris Sale try and recreate exactly what he did last year? I don't know that he has that in him. We will see how that all plays out. The Braves have the second best rotation in the NL East, but the Phillies have a chance to compete for best rotation in baseball. It's them and the Dodgers, and there's a pretty sizable gap between everybody else. So that should make you feel pretty darn good because the lineups were close, right? One injury here, one slump there, and the next thing you know, that lineup setup is all flipped on who has the best one. But the rotations, the Phillies are by far and away the best rotation in the NL East, by my assumption or by my evaluation heading into this season. So that should make you feel pretty darn good. The Mets, third. I can't put them fourth, but they're definitely a distant third. The Mets pitching, at least in the starting rotation, is in a really weird spot. They have had some bumps and bruises already. I don't know how long they're going to be able to stay healthy for. They weren't that great last year. They got hot in the postseason. They got the job done. So I'm not going to majorly doubt their ability to contend, but that rotation is going to be their Achilles heel, if anything is, this year. So Phils have the best rotation. Phils have the third best lineup. Braves have the best lineup. Braves have the second best rotation. So on aggregate, I guess the Braves would be leading right now. But then we go to the bullpen. And this is going to sound homerish. I promise you. Do your research. Look up the names. Look up the numbers. The Philadelphia Phillies, they also have the best bullpen in the National League East going into this year. And you might say, Connor, all you've talked about all year is all offseason, is how the bullpen worries you, how they haven't made enough moves, how they didn't bring back Carlos Estevez. They didn't bring back Jeff Hoffman. Matt Strahm is injured right now. Taijuan Walker might be in the bullpen. You can't figure out who's going to get the eighth and final spot in there, even if everyone else is healthy. I know. And guess what? Even with all that, the Philadelphia Phillies are still a pretty darn good bullpen. Now, I've long been saying this offseason, they're top, 8 to 10 in baseball. They're in the top third. Now, the Braves have some major questions as well. They lost some big bullpen arms, and now they're going to get Jesse Chavez back at some point, who they lost because he always comes back. You know Jesse Chavez, the guy with the glasses that always seems to pitch for the Braves and goes back there every year. The Mets bullpen is solid, but it's really Edwin Diaz heavy. They have a couple of other arms that they like, but they're not as balanced out either. And I think the Phillies have more guys with upside when everybody is healthy. I really do. I think Ryan Kirkring's a monster. I think Matt Strahm, once he's healthy, is going to be an all-star caliber arm again. I think Jose Alvarado can be one of the best lefty relievers on the planet when he's got things going right. I think Jordan Romano is going to be a big piece for this team this year. Jose Ruiz had a nice year. Like the Phillies, as much as they're not the 2024 Phillies bullpen, they're still the best bullpen in this division. And I would say the Mets are probably the second best bullpen in the division. And then the Braves are probably like 2B. They're pretty darn close, those two. But they're all contending, all probably top 12 to 14. I don't know how much lower I'd put the Braves or the Mets, because the Phillies are probably like 8 for me in baseball right now at the top end of their evaluation line. But like, I feel that the Phillies have more upside as a bullpen than either the Mets or the Braves do. So Phillies are number 1 in rotation. They're number 1 in bullpen, and they are number 3 in rotation or in lineup, when that could probably put them as the 4th or 5th best lineup in all the baseball. Like, that's so good, guys. They are stacked for an NL East repeat, and I don't know that it's going to be easy, right? The Braves are a very good baseball team. The Mets are a very good baseball team. The Nationals could be a little pesky. The Marlins are going to give free wins to somebody when it really bothers you. So it's a tricky division to go and win, and the Braves will be coming back with a vengeance. They are the division favorites, and I don't know, I guess talent-wise, maybe they should be, but reputation-wise, shouldn't it be the Phillies? It's tough to tell. It'll be one of the more intriguing divisions in baseball, but anyone who looks at the Phillies is like, well, they didn't do enough this offseason. Well, the Mets made arguably the biggest signing in baseball this offseason, and they're probably going to be 3rd in division. You know why? Because their pitching staff isn't good enough. Their rotation isn't good enough to win the division. Now, they could still make noise in the postseason, but that's the point. The Phillies, without doing anything, are so set up. So, yeah, I may be being a little bit homerish there, but look at some of the names, look at some of the numbers. I think my evaluation is pretty sound, and that should make you feel pretty good about the Philadelphia Phillies' chances to be in contention for the NL East. Could you imagine if we just had like a 3-team race to like 92 wins in the NL East this year? How great that would be for baseball when the other side, the other coast of the National League is just the Dodgers beating the brakes off everybody. I think baseball needs it. I think we want the Phillies to win the division, obviously, but it would be cool to see. It'll be a very intriguing season when it comes to the divisional race. But it's been an intriguing last part of spring for a couple of players. We haven't done a spring update for a little bit, so I want to get back into a couple of trends from down in spring training that may worry you or excite you, depending on who we're talking about. So we will discuss that coming up as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Let's talk about FanDuel first, though, because March Madness is here, and FanDuel's giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. Listen, there are some great underdogs in the tournament this year, but here's how you want to do it, right? Here's how you want to bet the underdogs. If you see any team that plays in the SEC, in the Southeastern Conference, you see any team there that's an underdog, you bet them on the money line. That is my principle, right? Because the SEC is just heads and tails above every, I think the expression's heads and shoulders, above every other conference in college basketball this year. So keep an eye on that. That's your CT tip for you. But you visit FanDuel.com, you can go ahead and get in on the college hoops all tournament long. And again, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So go ahead and check out our friends at FanDuel for March Madness. All right, let's talk a little bit about some spring trends, because there are some good and there's some not so good. So let's start with the positive, shall we? Johan Rojas is tearing the absolute cover off the ball still. So that's a good sign. Now, again, the disclaimer on all of this, it's spring ball. I'm not overly putting stock into any of this, but I do want to, this is an information thing. What you do with it is based on your own interpretation of these numbers. My interpretation of these numbers are, it's spring. It doesn't matter. They don't always translate. It's cool to see baseball's back. That's where I'm at with spring training. But if you want to put more stock into it, you can. I'm just telling you what's happening, okay? So no one can come at me and say, when Rojas is batting .210 in the first month of the season, hey, you said he was so good in spring. I'm just giving you the information, folks. This is reporter Connor right now. But Johan Rojas is tearing the cover off the ball in spring training. That should be a good thing to see to add to the outfield depth. If that translates over to the regular season, well, he may get a little more time backing up guys like Brandon Marsh and Max Kepler than we thought. So we've already talked about Rojas a good amount. He leads the team. Oh, excuse me. He leads the team in RBIs in spring training so far. Now, 7 is not like a crazy number as far as leading the team, but that's where he's at. So that's something, right? I guess, maybe, potentially. Spring training, who knows? Another guy, speaking of outfielders tearing the cover off the ball, Max Kepler's been showing it off a little bit. He's been swinging the bat pretty darn well. Now, regular season, different, but he seems to be getting comfortable in his new role with his new team. He's going to be your left fielder as often as he can hit. And if he can hit, he'll be out there pretty much every day. And that'll make it easier because then you can just rotate Rojas and Marsh in center field as need be. The tough thing you don't want to get into is when when Kepler's struggling against lefties and Marsh is struggling against lefties at the same time, because you don't have another outfield capable bat until Weston Wilson gets back, and we don't know when that's going to be. So Rojas, if he just has to back up one dude, can mitigate that a little bit. Face lefties, do his job. But if it's both of them struggling, that's where you get into kind of outfield Armageddon for the Philadelphia Phillies. But the good news is Max Kepler's been swinging it well. So that is a good sign for the Philadelphia Phillies outfield as far as production this year. I don't think they're going to be terrible. Do I think they're going to have the best outfield in baseball? No shot. But are they going to be league average? Yeah, I think so. Are they going to be above league average? I also think so. I mean, listen, Nick Castellanos is an all-star caliber player in right field. Brandon Marsh is a solid player in center. Even though people want him to be better, he is a league average to league slightly above average outfielder. And Max Kepler has the upside in the power numbers. It's probably a league average player, maybe league below average a little bit based on some prior performances, but still, you got to be okay with what the Philadelphia Phillies put into the outfield because no help is coming. So accept the fact that they're probably a league average unit, accept that there are enough league above average units on this team that can make things work, and we'll move on to the regular season. But we're also going to move on in this segment to guys that have not been doing so well. So we'll start with the shortstop because we've talked about him potentially being in for a big year. He seemed comfortable last year. He hit 295. He started not the highway, the batting average. He started to put together a little bit more of a Trey Turner-esque season. And in spring training, he did absolutely nothing so far this year. He has not hit the ball at all. He went yard the other day, and it was like his second hit of the spring. Remember, the year that Trey Turner had his absolute blow-up, terrible year with the Philadelphia Phillies, what was he doing this time of year? What was he doing in spring training? He was at the World Baseball Classic being the hottest hitter on planet Earth. And then he couldn't hit the broadside of the barn in the regular season. So forgive me if I'm not concerned about Trey Turner's inability, I should say, to hit in spring training this year, because the best kind of spring time frame we'd ever seen from him led to the worst season we've seen from him. So I imagine Trey will be fine. We'll see when we get to the regular season, but he hasn't really been hitting the ball all that well. Nick Castellanos hasn't really been hitting the ball all that well. He's been striking out at a pretty high rate. It's spring. He hasn't seen a lot of these pitchers. I'm not overly concerned about that. He had a really strong year for the Philadelphia Phillies for the most part last year. I almost called them the Philadelphia Phillies. But Castellanos is another one of those veteran guys that's going to be just fine. Like, I also worry less about veterans when it comes to spring training than the younger guys trying to make a team, because the young guys, we don't have anything to go off of in the regular season. Guys like Turner and Castellanos, you can see the track record. Like, ultimately, these guys are going to be more likely than not back of the baseball card guys. How they get there could be interesting. Slump, peak, hot stretch, who knows? But they're going to hit around their career average pretty much every year, and everything's going to be just fine, regardless of what they do in Clearwater while they're playing golf every day. So that's all good. And the least concerning one of these spring trends that I have is this one about Jesus Luzardo. Like, this worries me 0%. It would worry me -% if that was possible. Now, it doesn't make me feel better, so I guess I can't go -% worried. But there have been a lot of people that saw Jesus Luzardo give up 3 home runs on 3 pitches, including a grand slam, and one of his more recent appearances. It may have been his most recent appearances. I've lost track of who's throwing when. But everyone got not everyone, but people got a little worried about Jesus Luzardo. They said, oh, my goodness, do we have a guy that's going to give a bunch of bombs at Citizens Bank Park? 3 home runs on 3 pitches, guys, in spring training. Can you figure it out? This is not the Da Vinci Code. The guy's working on stuff, all right? They may say, throw a high fastball, throw it middle up, all right? We need you to be able to hit that spot this year to set up another pitch. That may be the coaching point to Jesus Luzardo. And you know what happens? He throws that high middle fastball, and the guy turns on it and cranks it because you didn't set it up with anything. You're just working on that location for spring training. And you know what your pitching coach says? Hey, again. You do it again. Hey, again. You do it again. And that's not just the prime example. That's not exactly what happened on these 3 pitches. But my point is, we told a story earlier in the year about Max Scherzer and the automatic challenge that Trey Turner did, right off the rip, and how Max Scherzer told Jason Stark he was trying to throw that ball down the middle so Trey Turner could hit a home run. There's a lot of stuff going on. When you see a player that's firmly entrenched in making a team, you can never put too much on these crazy performances in spring training. Often if you see that, that means somebody's working on something. You saw a guy last year in spring training. I forget who it was or for what team. He was not cleared to swing. They still gave him at bats. He stood up there, and the pitchers knew he could not swing, and he got on base 7 out of 12 times because he was just getting walked because people are working on stuff. Spring training's weird, man. Don't put too much stock into it. So if you're worried about guys like Jesus Luzardo or Nick Castellanos or Trey Turner, or if you're excited about guys like Johan Rojas or Max Kepler, slow your roll in any direction. We've got real-time baseball coming your way in under 2 weeks. So it'll get here when it gets here. 12 days until opening day for the Philadelphia Phillies. Trust me, we'll have baseball soon enough. But coming up next, we're going to talk about a guy who could be on the team when the Philadelphia Phillies head to Washington for opening day. We asked about Taijuan Walker, and I'll remind you of what our question was. And I'm actually proud of the Philadelphia Phillies fan base and their responses to this one because I would have expected a little more vitriol on this. So I'll explain everything coming up next as we do Off the Pole on today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Let's talk about Monarch money first, though. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where in the world did all my money go? It happens to me probably once every other week. Between dining out and online shopping and entertainment, it's super easy to lose track. Maybe vacation. I went down to Florida. I spent a lot of money. Well, I need help from Monarch Money. That's where they come in. They're your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building actual wealth. You don't want to stay even. You want to grow. Well, that's what Monarch Money helps you with. And when I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food, delivery, and stuff like that, going out to eat even. It tracks all of this stuff. It categorizes all of this stuff. So you can see easily, hey, I went out to dinner last night. How much did I spend on those fish tacos? Oh, wow, I spent this much on food this week and significantly less on gas. Well, I need to cut back on food. It's super easy. It's like having your own personal assistant when it comes to your finances. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. All right, it's time for some off-the-poll responses because we put out an interesting question, one that I wanted the fan base's tenor on. So, Taijuan Walker is seeming more and more likely to be a possibility or a probability even to go ahead and be the opening day bullpen member of the Philadelphia Phillies in the back end of the pen. Well, not the back end of the pen, but just back end as far as one of the last couple guys to make it onto the roster. If you're looking at the 7th and 8th spots in the bullpen post-Matt Strahm injury, Taijuan Walker seems to be a near lock at this point. So I need to prepare the Philadelphia Phillies fan base or make sure the fan base has prepared themselves for Walker Geddon. Okay, we'll workshop it. I didn't like that as much as it sounded in my head. But the situation of if Taijuan Walker makes the team, how is this Phillies fan base going to react? Are you going to be understanding of the situation that led to it? Are you going to be mad because you just see, hey, Taijuan Walker's back on the team and we don't like that guy because he stinks? Will there be nuance? Will there be hatred? What is there going to be? So, of course, I went to Twitter, X, whatever you call it, and I put out the off the poll question for today's episode. Here's the question. If Taijuan Walker makes the team in the bullpen out of spring training, what will your reaction be? There were only two options because I think they were generally all-encompassing of the two camps I'm trying to break down. Option one was, I get why, not a big deal. Option two was, what are the Phils doing? So basically, it's either you understand why you're in that situation and you're okay with it, or you don't understand why this guy's still on the team. Now, I don't think people have fully confronted this as a realistic possibility or even a probability to this point, like the casual Phillies fan, the ones who are not zoned in on all the Phillies news and still basking in the glory of the Eagles Super Bowl win. I think it's going to be surprising when he comes out of the bullpen for the first time, if indeed he does make the team, and that's what it seems like. But for people who are zoned in on this, I really like the maturity of the responses, or at least the percentage that indicates maturity. So 68% of responders to this question said, I get why, not a big deal. Nearly 3/4, right? Well, I might be upping a little bit. A little over 66%, obviously. That was the dumbest thing I think I've ever said. I was trying to break it down into manageable numbers. I said 68%. It's a little over 66%. See, folks, it's spring training for everybody. This doesn't mean I'm not going to be able to do numbers during the season, but you see why I say I'm not a numbers guy. I'm glad that people are being mature enough about the Taijuan Walker situation, where 68% of responders are looking at this as a situation that they understand, right? It's not enjoyable. It's not preferable, but with Matt Strahm going down and an extra spot in the bullpen and the Phillies paying Taijuan Walker what they are, rather than needing the salary, it seems they're content to put him in the backside of the bullpen and see if there's any situations in like the 5th or 6th inning where it fits for him to go out there to stash him as starter depth in case we hit DEFCON 1. And then we'll live with that until maybe you find a trade partner, or until, I don't know, maybe you get to the point where he's so bad you have to release him and you just eat the salary, or maybe he carves himself out a little role. Here's the thing. I'm not inherently rooting against Taijuan Walker. Like, I have no personal beef with the man. He didn't, like, I don't know, not hold the door open for me at a Wawa or something. Like, I just don't think he's that good of a pitcher right now at this point in his career. I think he has been in the past. If he proves he can be that guy again, I'm happy to have good pitchers on the Philadelphia Phillies. I don't care if I liked you in the past or not. So if he has a great year or a good year or a serviceable year, more power to him, better for the Philadelphia Phillies. I just don't see it as likely, which is why the other option existed. What are the Phils doing? Now, 32% of you responding said, what are the Phils doing? And that still is an interesting contingency. That's a third of the responders are saying, hey, what in the world are the Phils doing? That's going to be a loud minority when it comes to this move being made, because I do believe it is going to be made. But I do like that you're outweighed by people who actually understand the situation going on, that you don't have a lot of bullpen depth and you're already paying the guy. But for all those people that are mad or going to be mad if and when Taijuan Walker makes the team, this is your segment right here, or rather, this is your 2 minutes before we wrap up the show. So stay with me on this one. If nobody wants to trade for him, they're not going to just cut him and eat all that money for nothing. I know he hasn't been great, but why would you pay money for literally nothing? Is literally nothing better than Taijuan Walker? Last year, you could make that argument. This year, who knows? Velocity has upticked. That's not a lie. Maybe he's feeling more comfortable. Maybe he's more healthy. I don't know. I'm not down there every day with him in spring training. But if the Phillies give him a chance, I'm an optimist. I'm going to look for the best. But even if the best doesn't work out, there is no upside to just cutting him. The upside is you could trade him at the deadline if he goes out there and gives you something that's sustainable out of the bullpen. You could use him in a worst case scenario starting situation because he has started at the major league level before, rather than dipping into the minors and throwing some 19-year-old who's never been up here before, or 22-year-old or 24-year-old. And I'm not talking about Andrew Painter. I'm talking about other guys. Andrew Painter, this does not restrict his ability to come up and be a part of the rotation. And the other thing with Taijuan Walker is just like, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, basically, is what this comes down to. If no one's going to trade for him, you're not going to cut him. You got to find a role for him. He's not going to start because he's not good enough to. You have open spots in the bullpen. He slots in there perfectly. He's not taking anyone's spot. And maybe once Matt Strahm and maybe if somebody else shows that they're ready to come up, are good to take like the final 2 spots in the bullpen, maybe Taijuan Walker does get cut. Maybe he does get waived. Maybe that is what the Phillies do. Maybe they do trade him. But for the time being, I'm glad that most of the fan base, or most of our responders at least, are showing some understanding of the situation of why Taijuan Walker seems likely to make the team for the Philadelphia Phillies on opening day. That's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. So this is the final week we're heading into without baseball. We're going to do Mailbag Monday questions on Monday's episode, and then next week will be a lead up to opening day. So it's right around the corner, folks. It's getting right there. I will put out a tweet for Mailbag Monday responses on Twitter at @LO_Phillies. So you can go ahead and check that out. We'll run through a bunch of those on Monday. And we're also going to start to turn more of attention to the division like we did in today's episode, starting to look at the chase for the NL East and who some of the teams are, or rather who some of the players are that could make big impacts in that chase. So a lot more regular season focused stuff coming up next week, but that's all for today's episode. Once again, we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for joining us again. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribe to the YouTube, all that great stuff that helps us out on Locked On Phillies. And I'll talk to you on Monday on our next episode.